just the facts, ma'am.
Mary, we're short on time, but I didn't want to go without getting you to tell us a little bit about your new book and the important topic that covers.
My forthcoming book, which will be released on September 7th, and it's available for pre-order, is called Debunking the 1619 Project. And the 1619 Project was a special issue of the New York Times Magazine that came out on August 18th, 2019, intended to explore the first landing of the Africans in Jamestown in 1619. And it's a series of articles, and it sprang from the mind, as the editor put it, from the mind of Nicole Hannah-Jones, who is a staff writer for the New York Times Magazine, not a historian, but she has been steeped in the kind of history of Lerone Bennett, who was in the 1960s the one who came up with the term of Black Power. So it's really polemic. It's intended to convey the idea that the real founders were not, the founders, the Declaration of Independence means nothing. It was a hypocritical statement by a slave owner, an enslaver, as they like to put it, that racism, because of slavery, is in our very DNA. She uses that term. So Nicole Hannah-Jones is the one who wrote the lead essay. It was her idea. And she promotes this sort of sweeping historical argument that from that moment in 1619, when these people were enslaved, and that is historically dubious, we really don't know. From that moment until the present, racism permeates our culture, permeates our government, and we still have the effects of slavery, and it's in our history. And of course, this is history that's as distorted as Howard Zinn's. It misrepresents sources. It misrepresents facts. There are no citations, but many historians, dozens, have come out and addressed specific points of it. And so what I do is I go through it and I look at her essay and some of the others. And what I do is I address it in two ways. So the argument is made on a moral basis and on an economic basis. If you look at it overall, the moral basis is that whites uniformly have been oppressors, and that abolitionism and civil rights was done almost exclusively by the enslaved and blacks alone, and that white people still have this racism within them. And the way to democracy has been led solely by black people, not by white. And we're in, whatever we have had in terms of an inkling of democracy, which peculiarly aligns with the Democratic Party platform, has been because of the moral leadership of oppressed blacks. And the other argument is that the wealth and power of this country has been built on the backs of the enslaved, that we would not have this wealth and prosperity as a country without the labor and the suffering of blacks as enslaved people, and continuing to this day. So the real founders are not the founders, they are the people who were enslaved and their descendants, and that we would have no country at all if it weren't for the slaves. I mean, these are preposterous arguments with a grain of truth, but preposterous.
Yeah, quite. Well, of course, it ignores an enormous fact, which is that being an agrarian society, which is what is required to support slavery before mechanization, um, that the South lost the war because they weren't mechanized. And the
Yeah.
North won the war because it could make armaments and build things better and build ships and cannons and rifles at a much faster rate. The very limited industrial production, largely in just a couple cities in the South, was obliterated by the North because it was an agrarian society. So I think they kind of missed a major a turning point between 1863 and 1865 that basically wiped out a lot of that, the so-called whatever that contributed to America was pretty much obliterated about 150, 160 years ago. So that's even more interesting that they try and use that basis. But I'm concerned because I think that has been used as largely a springboard, if you will, for the current movement for critical race theory, also known as CRT. And I find it interesting that our society is just now, parents in Loudoun County, Virginia, for instance, and other places are rising up and saying, what on earth are you guys doing to our children?
Yeah, and in order to have critical race theory be acceptable, you need a basis for it, and that is this distorted history. So they go hand in hand. Critical race theory looks at history through a lens that presents people not in true historical realism, but as simply members of groups that act as groups, and there is no individuality. There aren't any shades of gray. It's just it's a Marxist view, and in order to have CRT make sense, you have to believe in this distorted view of history.
Mary, we're running short on time. One of the things we try and do is keep these short so that people will actually watch them. That's actually one of our objectives, to share what you're talking about with our audience. Tell people, if they'd like some more information, what's the easiest way to get information from you?
Yes, well, thanks. Dissidentprof.com. You can, get my email address there, send me an email, get on my mailing list. I also have another site called marygrabar.com, Grabar, where I have links to the articles that I've published. So, I encourage everyone to get on my newsletter list. Be in touch with me that way. I will be posting, sending out notices about the book. It's going to be out September 7th. You can pre-order it through regnery.com or Amazon or any place else where books are being sold.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mary Grabar, for being on Saving America for this edition. Take good care.
Thank you.